The extended meaning of drinking in ancient times. A little more than a millennium ago, in 793 AD, started an era of bearded, broad-shouldered men in fur-lined coats with leather armor and iron helmets, brandishing huge axes and engraved swords, and riding long ships with intimidating dragon heads at the front. This was the age of the Vikings, ruthless groups of men who would raid any town in sight, stealing goods and capturing new land for their people. However, this documentary is not about how the Vikings found new land, but rather how they celebrated. Alcohol has been a substance inscribed in the history of the Vikings for hundreds of years. Their favorite alcoholic drink to make was mead, which was comprised of honey, water, and yeast, fermented into a so-called honey wine. This can be shown especially in the studies done by Mo Dagfinn and Klaus Oegel, two researchers that wanted to know if the myth about Vikings drinking mead was true. Dagfinn and Oegel found human coprolites, or fossilized feces, from archaeological sites in Birka, Sweden, and Dernburg, Austria. The human coprolites were dissected in order to find pollen residues from insect-pollinated plants, particularly Filipendula ulmaria, a plant that was historically used to flavor mead. They found sufficient evidence to conclude that mead consumption was used in the Vikings' diets and celebrations. Not only is there evidence that the Vikings drank mead, but also about how and when they used it. Eil's saga is an account from a Viking named Eil, and includes how he and other Vikings would drink alcohol. One excerpt from the saga states, "After this ale was borne in, beer of the strongest. Soon they began to drink bumpers. Each man was to drink off the horn, and especial care was taken that Eil and his companions should drink hard. Eil drank without shirking a drop for a long while, but when his companions were become helpless, then he drank for them what they could not. So matters went on till tables were removed, and by then all in the room were well drunk." Eil's Saga, chapter 44. This part shows how drinking was big in festive gatherings, and the Vikings would usually drink in celebrations, usually in heavy manners. Throughout the saga, Eil explains how mead was more than just an alcoholic beverage, but also a symbol of kinship, celebration, and culture in the Viking society. Now we move on to another ancient civilization, about 2,500 years ago, when the Achaemenid Empire was founded by Cyrus the Great and is known as the First Persian Empire, the Ancient Persians. Ancient Persians were known for long robes and dresses, with jewelry indicating their social class, consisting of many artists and philosophers. One of the most significant ancient Persian philosophers was a man named Herodotus, who explained how ancient Persians would drink alcohol and how they celebrated with it. In one of his writings, the Histories, Book 1, Herodotus states, "Cyrus then commanded them to wash themselves and come on the next day. Meanwhile, collecting his father's goats and sheep and oxen in one place, he slaughtered and prepared them as a feast for the Persian host, providing also wine and all foods that were most suitable. When the Persians came on the next day, he had them sit and feast in a meadow." The Histories, chapter 126. Herodotus explains how after a big harvesting of food, the Persians would celebrate with a feast, which included wine and ranged from personal celebrations to political debates. The ancient Persians even have a record for making one of the first winemaking techniques. They would use a wine jar, which some would call Shatu Haji Firoz, and the wine jar shown in this image is a preserved piece currently displayed in the University of Pennsylvania Museum in Archaeology and Anthropology. The ancient Persians would use the jar to ferment and store wine, and it is highly prevalent in their stories, art, and history. After learning about the ancient Vikings and the ancient Persians, you can see how much alcohol dates back in history. Each ancient civilization has their own unique story about which alcohol they would drink, how they would make it, and the way they used it. Now that you know more about how these two civilizations used alcohol, you can see how alcohol was more than just a beverage, but also played a huge role in expressions of values, power, and celebration.